was the scene as longtime Trump associate Roger Stone left his arraignment this afternoon. He pled not guilty to charges stemming from the Mueller probe, just 5 days since his home was swarmed by dozens of FBI agents in a pre-dawn raid. Now, in his first television interview since being arraigned, Roger Stone joins us live. Roger, you've now had a busy few days, to say the least. On Sunday, you told Stephanopoulos that you would be open, perhaps, to cooperating with Mueller. But just yesterday, you seemed to change your tune. What's going on? Which is it?
Yeah, I think that my comments on ABC may have been misconstrued. What I meant was, I'm not going to bear false witness against anybody. I'm going to tell the truth under oath and to the investigators if they have questions, subject, obviously, to the advice, format-wise, of my attorneys. But I'm not going to do what Michael Cohen has done. I'm not going to make up lies or bear false witness against Donald Trump or anyone else. The truth of the matter is that even though I'm accused of lying, when I get Adam Schiff on the stand, when I get Eric Swalwell on the stand, when I get other members of that committee on the stand, I'll demonstrate that they're the ones who are lying, not me.
Your old pal Jerome Corsi was on with Martha McCallum earlier tonight and had a warning for you. Let's watch.
They are extremely thorough. They have everything. Roger shouldn't underestimate that every communication he had, telephone, email, who he met with in person, the Mueller team has spent enormous, they have endless resources. So Roger should go in this fully prepared, understanding that he's not going to be able to dodge the evidence that I'm sure Mueller has.
Your reaction to that?
Unfortunately, Dr. Corsi has already said a couple things about me that are demonstrably not true. Unfortunately, well, for example, that a memo he wrote me regarding the Podesta brothers' lucrative business dealings in Russia, based on public reports published by Peter Schweitzer in both the New York Post and Breitbart, was somehow a cover story. A cover story for what? What would there be to cover up? My tweet, the Podesta brothers, was not controversial for 6 weeks. Dr. Corsi said he told me that John Podesta's emails had been stolen. On Tucker Carlson, he said he told many people that. With Ari Melber, not really a journalist, he said he's told everybody that. Well, he never told me that, and maybe he can tell us who else he told. He also said that I knew about the Billy Bush NBC tape in advance, and I directed him to contact Julian Assange and tell him to move up or change the dump of data to distract from that. Whole cloth. Unfortunately for Dr. Corsi, I have text messages and emails and metadata that shows that he's not telling the truth.
I know you've already said you haven't deleted any emails from any email address that you've ever had. Any physical documents, have they ever been destroyed by you?
No, absolutely not. Now, it is true that I forgot that I had text messages in an old cell phone that are entirely exculpatory, which prove definitively that Randy Credico was my source as to the content, not the content.
And is that one of the false statements that you made on Capitol Hill?
Yes, that would be one of the false statements. But the text messages prove that Credico is my source as to the significance in the October release date of the WikiLeaks
Right,
material.
and we had talked about that on radio as well at the time. Now, are there any, look, we all forget things, but these are pretty, given the nature of this investigation, might you have forgotten other things?
To the extent that I made mistakes of memory, they would be without intent and they would be inconsequential. They would not be material under the law. For any legal expert to look at these little excerpts without reading 4.5 hours of testimony to see the context, the questions before and the questions after, would be irresponsible. But you can watch CNN and see this indictment is a slam dunk. My attorneys don't think so.
A former FBI Assistant Director Frank Figliuzzi was talking about your only hope now being a pardon. Let's watch.
I'm a strong advocate of the theory that Stone is positioning himself for a pardon and that it's likely the only hope he has. He seems driven and motivated merely by absolute publicity, absolutely being in the center of things, regardless of whether it's bad publicity or good publicity. He needs to be there, and he seems to be shaded toward the negative.
Is that it? Is your only path out, according to these characters on TV?
I don't
you're
know.
appearing to talk to the president through our show to get a pardon?
I don't know many FBI agents who know much about politics or public relations or the law in many cases. The truth of the matter is, if you read my book, Stone's Rules, I believe when you're falsely accused of something and you say nothing, you say no comment, or Roger Stone was unavailable, most Americans assume you're guilty. The whole purpose of this over-the-top raid on my house, in which they sent in more men than were used to protect our compound in Benghazi, was to paint a picture of me, to poison a jury pool.
It was so ridiculous.
As public enemy number one.
It was one of the more ridiculous things, and it was offensive. It was offensive to me. Regardless of what goes down here, it was like Elian Gonzalez times 29 or times 28. It was absurd. All right. We also have your friend over at MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski,
yes,
who was making a point about your claim that your dog was terrorized.
Yes.
How many dogs do you have, by the way?
I have 2 dogs.
And what kind?
They're Yorkshire Terriers.
Okay, Yorkies. Okay, and they get terrorized easily. They do. They can. They're a little yappy. I love them, but they're yappy. All right. This is what she said.
Stone's complaint that his dogs were terrorized is also a tiny bit ironic because his 7-count indictment includes the allegation that Stone tried to intimidate someone by threatening their therapy dog.
Wow.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Number one, Randy Credico's dog is not registered in New York as a therapy dog. Number 2, he wasn't feeding the dog, perhaps because he was spending his money on other things, and that was the context. Once again, you take something out of context, and it has a different meaning. You can go to the Daily Caller and read the articles I've written about animal welfare and ending the inhumane medical testing on dogs and cats. I'm a dog lover.
I mean, I know this about Roger. Roger's a very pro-animal person like I am. And that is one. You could say you're dirty tricksters. Are you going to do the Nixon peace sign for every appearance, by the way?
No, not necessarily.
T-shirts, buttons. I mean, we got to get it going.
Well, when I was arrested, I was wearing my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong T-shirt.
Of course.
You can buy them. It's at 1776 shop.
By the way, Pompeo says that WikiLeaks is a non-state hostile intelligence service. Why would you work with them? Why would you want anything?
Could I see the proof of that, please? Where's the judicial decision that says that? I'm afraid our intelligence services have been politicized. John Brennan says the same thing. I don't believe it to be true. So it's a claim. It's never been proved in a U.S. court of law.
You're talking about Russia having actually gotten the information.
We don't know that. First of all,
everyone concludes that, but they just kind of pronounce it. But
right. It's a talking point, but it's unproven in a court of law, and I don't believe it's true. I think Julian Assange, who's interviewed by Sean Hannity, is a journalist. He does the same thing the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal do. Roger,
we'll be watching. We'll be watching. When's your next appearance?
I actually will probably come on with Tucker later in the week.
Okay. I have Laura Ingraham podcast tomorrow.
Yes, indeed.
All right. That's what you were trying. I was trying to get you to say that. Roger, thanks so much.